All right, so a very good evening to you all. This is your brother and friend Joshua of the New African Concept, and once again, we come your way with fact checkers on Mondays, as we always do. Today is going to be brief as we look at a very important question, and that question is that: is there really life after death? Is there really life after death? I think life's most important questions happens to be in three folds. You can also tease it to be about five, but generally we have three. One of the questions is that, where am I coming from? Which deals with source. And then the second question is, who am I? Which deals, or in other words, which deals with identity. The next question is, what am I here on earth for? Which deals with purpose. And then the other question is, where do I go from here? Which deals with life after death, or what we normally call the afterlife. So the question we are looking at tonight happens to be one of the important or most important questions of life, where we are talking about, where am I coming from? Who am I? That is a sense of identity. What am I here for? A sense of purpose. And then the afterlife. Where do we all go from here? Obviously, it's most probable, but that 100 to 150 years from now, if nothing has happened and then everything is going as expected, all of us in the world now, about 7.7 to 7.9 billion people living in the world now, all of us would have been buried. When we talk about death, it is something that we normally, it is not an enjoyable topic or an enjoyable subject that we want to hear, because many people dread the aspect of death, the mystery of death, and then the pain that it comes with. In fact, many people are even afraid of death. But you should know that as we are here, 200 years ago in the world, there were several people living. But 200 years ago, all of them have died. 500 years ago, there were some people living here on earth. All of them have died. So what it means is that even the children that we have now and those who have been born today, the meaning is that 200 years from now, 150 years from now, every single person living on earth here, including you, including myself, no matter how we are afraid of death, no matter how we may not want it, in one way or the other, we would have all been buried. That is a sad reality, but the earlier we embrace the reality, the better for us. So we are asking ourselves a very important question, and that is there really life after death? Is there really life after death? It depends on your belief system. So there are many belief systems, and then the belief system you have will determine whether you believe in the fact that there is life after death. For instance, we have those who call themselves atheists. The atheist is the person who does not believe in the concept of God. He does not believe in a superior creator. So he deals with, natural philosophy or philosophical naturalism, or what we call, maybe the basic sciences. So for him, he seeks to explain everything within the realm of science. And anything beyond science does not seem real to him, no matter how convincing it may be like. So for a person of the 80s, there is absolutely no life after death. So for the atheist, he does not believe that there is life after death, because after all, what we know is that the physical body, when you go to the mortuary, it is lying down lifeless. Everything has ended. So there is no life after death. Once the person dies, everything ends there. We bury the person, and that is the end of everything. So it depends on where you stand. If you are standing on the platform of atheism, then you will be, having the belief system that there is no life after death. Now, in paganism or in indigenous religion, or in our case, what we will call the African traditional religion, there is a belief in the world of the spirits, or there is a belief in the afterlife. Enti impempi no say yes ye obi a ewo eye traditional system no impempi no otate say ye ka say asamando eye oman a ye de ebia okwa ye say say in our traditional system in the previous times ohini wu a anase obi a odimu ewu a, what they were doing is that they used to kill, they'll kill some of the slaves, or they'll kill, some of the people. What was it? The mindset was that esan se oye nipa titiri anase esan se oye ohene no, imra na otiase no na owo eye nkwa na omusom no, enti okọ eye asamando no ewo se ye pe ebi mo no mu esan ekosom no ewo ho. So even in our traditional religion, in our indigenous culture, in our pagan belief system, there is the belief in the afterlife. There is the belief in the afterlife. I'm not talking of heaven or hell or this, and I'm just talking of the concept of the afterlife. So they believe this so much that they usually made allusion to it. It is a that will be, and I say you go see obi a ubon say ye the drew emusie ho at the graveside, then people whose fathers or uncles have died previously, I say yeah tononkra say okwa ede chiame wo fama miun, okwa chiame mame mamiun. Why? Because the belief system is that who are not ensign, who are not everything does not cut short. So if you are standing on the platform of the traditional religion or pagan belief system or the indigenous culture, then you believe in the afterlife. You believe that there is life after death. Now, if you are standing on the platform of, theism, maybe in Islam, if you are standing on the platform of Islam, it is the same thing. Islam believes that there is life after death, and even they go to the extent of believing in heaven and then in hell. The obeye anase ekwan obenam so ansa na ode akọ honom no is where the differences lie. But there is that there is that belief system. So apart from that, there is also on the platform of Christianity, and Christianity also believes in life after death. So in traditional belief system, in Islam, and then in Christianity, and then all those kinds, they believe that there is life after death. In atheism, there is no belief that there is life after death. There is also the other aspect of reincarnation. Reincarnation as championed by certain religious system like Hinduism and then all. And in reincarnation, the mentality is that se obi wua okwa osamba biom. Incarnation means to be born. So reincarnation means rebirth. So it means that it is the belief system that says that when an individual dies, he or she comes back into the world. But this time, depending on his first life, whether he was a good person, he comes back as a human being. If he was a bad person, he can come back as a plant. He can come back as a tree. He can come back as even an animal, depending on how he lived during his previous life. And then he keeps on going and coming and going and coming and going and coming. So that is also another belief system. But briefly, what I want to leave us with is to sound the suggestion. Now, I am not talking of heaven or hell or reincarnation or what. That one will be maybe next week. But for the question that have been posed is that, do we really believe? In other words, or is it really true? Or can we have a form of understanding that there is life beyond the grave? And I will say a big yes. Why will I say a big yes? I will say a big yes because if you believe that there is God, then you must believe that there is life after death. If you don't believe there is God, then we must first sort out the initial argument that is there God or does God exist? So if you don't believe there is God, then the initial discussion that we should be having is that does God exist? But if you believe there is God, just as the traditionalist or our traditional culture believes by referring to him as Twedian Ponkwame, Onyankopon, Ototrobonsu. So this gives us the idea that we already knew God. So the knowledge of God was already there. The knowledge of God is already there. So I'm saying that if you believe that there is God, then you must believe that there is life after death. And the reason is because if you believe there is God, then it means that it is God who created us. If you believe there is God, as again the atheists will say that, oh, it is we came together by chance, which is a very laughable thing, even using science to even explain. But that one will be a question for another time. For today, the question that we've been asked is that, do we really, is it really true, or can we really have a belief system that there is life after death? And then the first preamble is that you must believe that there is a supreme being, there is a superior power, that is God, or Allah, or Otwedian Ponkwame, or Nyumo, or Mau. Regardless of the dialect or the perspective that you give to him, at least you must subscribe to the fact that there is a higher being that created us. Immediately you accept the fact that it is God who created you and I, then it means that it gives birth to three things. One, it produces the fact that your source is of God and you don't own yourself. Yes, God has given you free will, but the free will that he has given you, you don't own your life. Immediately you believe that it is God who created us, then by default you have believed that, or you have accepted the fact that you are not the origin of yourself. It means that God is your source. It means that God, or that supreme being, is your source that actually gave birth to you, or in other words, that actually created you. So if you believe that God is your source, it means you don't own yourself. Number two, it produces the reality that you are a steward of your life. If you believe God created you, then it means that number one, you don't own yourself, or you are not the starting point of your life. It means that your life has been spared to you. It means that somebody, a supreme power, a supreme force, a supreme being, actually is the initiator and has given life to you. If you understand it that way, then the second thing it produces in the logic of argument is that you are a steward of your life. You are a steward of your life because you are not the one who gave life to yourself, and it was a superior power or a superior being that gave life to you. Then it means that you are a steward of your life. And I want you to understand very well that God created you, and if God created you, you don't own yourself. Number one, your source is God. Number two, you are a steward of your life. God has spared you that life, and you are only a steward. Who is a steward? A steward is someone who has been given, in charge of something. So you have been placed in charge of your own life. You have the choices and the decisions at your liberty. God has given you the free will. However, you are only a steward because you are not the originator of yourself. And finally, number three, it leads to the sense of, accountability. if you are a steward of your life, then it means that you are going to do what all stewards do. What do stewards do? Stewards render account at the end of the period. Our president, and then our MPs, and then all those people that we have given them power and authority to what? To do something for 4 years. After that, they must render account. And so all stewards must render account at the end of the time. So it stands to reason that if you don't own your life, and science cannot even answer life's greatest questions of where am I coming from, which is the source, who am I, which is identity, what am I here for, which is purpose, and where do I go from here, which is the afterlife. No matter how sophisticated science is, I believe in science, I believe in research, and I believe in technology and then all those kind of stuff. But science of itself is so weak that science, though it is useful for human development, civilizations, and advancement, science cannot answer our origin. Even Darwin, with his evolutionary theory, was finding it difficult, because he defined evolution as what? As the struggle or the struggle or the survival of the fittest. So evolution explains the survival of the fittest, but it does not explain the arrival of the first. So evolution will tell you that when you have, these kind of organisms within a given space, then given time, they will be combating among themselves. And then the weaker ones, the weakest species will what? Will go extinct. And then the stronger species will what? Will survive. That is the survival of the fittest. But before they arrived, or before we are talking of the survival of the fittest, science cannot answer, or evolution, even Darwin cannot answer. Darwin and Lamarck and then all those guys in science and evolution, they couldn't answer the arrival of the first. They are explaining that when they have arrived, it is by survival of the fittest. But before they got there, what the arrival of the first couldn't be explained by evolution and science. It stands to reason that we must subscribe to a higher being. So what am I saying in conclusion? What I'm saying is that your life is not of yourself. You don't own your life, because you are not the originator of your life. So there must be a higher being, that is God, that created the universe and created you and I. Once you believe that it is God that created you and I, there are three things that naturally come into play. Number one is that God, therefore, is your source. And because of that, you do not own yourself. Number two, if you do not own yourself, it means you are a steward. And number three, all stewards render account after the period. So when your life is done, because you don't own your life, if you own your life, then you can determine and decide that but you don't have that luxury, because you are not the originator of your life. So since you are only a steward, here on earth it will look like you own your life. Here on earth you have been given the free will, you have been given choices, and you can determine whatever you want to do. However, it is for a period. You are a steward. When your life here on earth is done, it is only logical that just as all stewards render account, you are also going to render account. Into when Osha mean quote Bible verse bia, but it is just logical for you to know that there is life after the grave. There is life beyond life here on earth. There is life after death. The question of heaven or hell or reincarnation will be for another time, possibly next week. So now I'm not talking of hell or what. I'm just establishing the fact that there is life even beyond the grave. And away, and yet even just a Christian concept. Muslims believe in it. Even traditionalists believe in it. Etina me say obi wu a ye ka say asamando e your maya say ni, which means that even in the traditional concept we believe that there is a place for the spirits. Now, as to whether it is heaven, hell, purgatory, annihilation, reincarnation, that is also a discussion for another time. But you must only understand that there is life beyond the grave. And there is life after here. And this is a solemn period for us to, as I end, this is a solemn period for us to think. This is a solemn period for us to assess our lives. Etoda esan se how the issues of life it makes us to forget about the realities of what we are talking about. But he said Kai say 200 years ago na inipa was asase saa nkrofo na no muti asase so 200 years ago bako kura ni wa oda so honom omu nyina ewu. 500 years ago there were people living here on earth omu nyina ewu. In the same vein ya yeti asase so including akwada ya wono nge ene. Next 100 to 150 years to come, however it is, all of us would have been gathered to our fathers. But the question is this, that because you don't own your life, and because you are a steward, it is logical to believe that all stewards will render account. And that is where the rubber hits the road. That is the multi-billion-dollar bill question. That what kind of account are we going to give? On that day. My message to the atheist who does not believe that there is life after death. I will recommend a book to you. The title of the book is The Dying Testimonies of the Saved and Unsaved by a man called Solomon Benjamin Shaw, S.B. Shaw. The title of the book, not only to atheists, anyone can read, a powerful material. The title is The Dying Testimonies of the Saved and Unsaved. One thing I've found, because I am in discussion a lot with atheists and Muslims and Christians and people, free thinkers, philosophers, people from different walks of life. And I have a message for three categories of people. First of all, I have a message to the unbeliever. I have the message to the atheist. I have the message to the philosopher. I have a message to the scientists who seem not to believe that there is life beyond the grave. You see, it is easier to be an atheist when when you are alive, when you are strong, when you are rich, and then you can call the shot. You can buy the cars you want. You can build the buildings that you want. It is easier to be an atheist when everything is going normal. But I have found that it is normally different to be an atheist on your deathbed, when reality begins to dawn on you. So to my atheist friends, never forget, as I mostly leave you with that question, no matter how hardcore you are as an atheist, I know that at every point in time, there is one question that will come to your mind. What if? And that is what I want to leave with you tonight. That what if? What if what the Christians are saying is true? What if? Just have it in mind. What if? Because at the end of the day, if what I believe is false, though I know it is not false, but even if what I believe is false, and I prepare myself for eternity, not that there is nothing like eternity, I have not lost anything. But my dear brethren, as atheists and free thinkers and philosophers and all those, agnostics, if you believe that there is nothing beyond the grave and you die and then you realize that there is something, I guess that you would have lost. But unfortunately, it would have been too late. But way beyond everything, remember this, that it is easier to be an atheist when you have the money and then everything is going on well. You're a professor teaching and then you have the money, you have the fame. On your deathbed, I can assure you that you will begin to readjust your mind. And then one thing that will be striking you, this question will always be hunting you on your deathbed. And what if? Because you are about taking a leap into the dark. And you will remember that what if, what the Christians were saying, that there is a place beyond the grave. What if it is true? I believe that once there is life, there is hope. Reach out. Let us talk. And then I believe that we can have, something for that. To my dear Muslim friends, as we normally do, for you, I know you believe in Al-Jannah, and I know you believe in heaven, you believe in hell. But the question is, are you on the right path? I may be wrong, you may be right. Or you may be wrong, I may be right. And that is why we normally engage in sound discussions, perspectives, and sometimes debates in a respectful manner in our quest for truth. When we are debating, it is not to find out who won. No, it is not a matter of who won or who did better or who is having oratory excellence. But rather it is aletheia. It is a quest for truth. Because it is so important that if I am wrong, then it means that I'll be eternally wrong. And if you are wrong, it means that you'll be eternally wrong. Let us keep on having these discussions. But I think that it is time for you to also question a lot of things, just as I've been doing to my own Christian belief system. Question a lot of things, and let us have more discussions, and I know that by and by the truth will be revealed to you. And finally, to my fellow Christians, to my fellow believers, time is ebbing out. Heaven is real, hell is real. There is life beyond the grave. Unfortunately, the way most Christians are living, it does not even suggest that eternity is real. It does not even suggest that life beyond the grave is real. Our choices, our way of life, our appetites, our motives does not even suggest to the unbeliever that we mean it serious, that there is hell, there is heaven. Please, my fellow brethren, time is ebbing out. And I want to use this opportunity to charge and challenge all of us that if we really believe that there is eternity, if we really believe that there is life beyond this life, if we really believe that heaven and hell, both of them are real, then we must live our lives in sync with it. Let us prepare a better place for our souls. Let us get more serious with our Christian lives. Don't just be a nominal churchgoer, a religious bigot. No, God or Christ is calling you to a fellowship with the Holy Spirit. Many people are in church, but they are not in Christ. Make sure that you take your Christian life much more seriously, because time is ebbing out. And by extension, if we understand this, it is time for us to win souls. There are several unbelievers in our families. There are several unbelievers in our communities, our neighborhoods. There are several unbelievers at our working places and all. Please spend time to intercede for souls and spend time to at least speak to a soul. This has been your brother and friend Joshua, and this has been Fact Checker. The question that came today was the fact that do we or can we have a belief system, or can we is it really true that there is life after death? And then I just use logic to explain that when you look at the systems in the world, when you look at the universe, it will tell you that there must be a supreme or a superior power that created us. Evolution will answer the survival of the fittest, but cannot answer the arrival of the first. So if it is God who created us, or any superior being that created us, then it means that three things come naturally to play. It means that one, you don't own yourself. Our source is God. And if you don't own yourself, it means that number two, you are a steward of your life here on earth. And then finally, number three, just like all stewards, you will be giving account. So if you believe nothing at all, these three things, by way of logic, should help you know that we will be giving account on the day of judgment. God richly bless you, and we will come again on Wednesday as we take a look at understanding the concept of the church. Stay blessed.